Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming early. We're going to hang out for a few more minutes just to let you know. So thank you all for coming early, but we're going to get started in a few minutes. Just to let you know, FYI, this is being recorded. So feel free to have your camera shut off if you'd like. Oh, hi, Alice.
Hi there.
I just got here as well.
Finished my other workshop, so now I'm here. And fortunately, I got very panicky last night because I realized, oh, if I have two going at the same time, will that crash?
Oh,
Well, the second one crashed the first one, but you can do two. That's the most you can do, I think. If
oh,
you know, so yeah.
for
So
future reference.
yeah. And I also was thinking about it, and I was thinking if you want to run the slides, that's fine. That would be work great.
Okay,
Okay.
no problem. Okay, I'll go ahead and you okay if I start sharing my screen right now, just with this
Yeah,
at the
go ahead.
welcome? Okay,
Go ahead.
thank you. All right. We'll leave this up for right now. Can you still see my screen okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I feel like when it goes big, I'm like, oh, what am I?
I know. I always check. I always ask my students, can you see this? And I wait and wait and wait until somebody finally says yes. Okay.
Or if we see a thumbs up, huh?
Yeah.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome, everyone.
We're just going to wait a couple minutes. I know people are still trickling in. We're still a little early. We hope your afternoon is going great. And maybe I could just put up the slide. Alice, what do you think of the check-in on the chat?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
So go ahead and sign in and tell us your name and what brings you to this session today. If you want to mention the school you're going to, you can as well if you're a student. I think vast majority of you are students here. Oh, and if you want to mention what age group you're interested in teaching. We are recording a session, so if you don't want to be on the recording, you can turn off your video, and we will be sending out a certificate, I should have said certificate, verifying attendance a few days after the conference. So that's what, but you don't need to put your email in the chat. If you give me your name, I've got your emails from the registration. So everybody doesn't need to broadcast their email to everyone. I thought people might be more comfortable not doing that.
That's a great idea. Oh. What is going on? So let me get that back on. Sorry.
It's okay.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
I actually see some teachers here, some instructors. I see Randy Osborne. Hi, Randy.
Hi, my name is Amanda Chio. I'm in Alice Hale class.
Hi, Amanda.
Hi, Amanda. Go ahead and sign into chat and with your name and why you're here. If you're a student, what age group, if you're interested in being a teacher, what age group do you want to teach?
Oh, I can't sign in. I'm on the Zoom call through my phone.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Then I'll tell you what, send me an email. After the conference, send me an email reminding you were at the conference, and so I can send you the certificate.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. But I am interested in the age group of 12 and under, so elementary, preschool, toddler, infant. And I do want to open up my own daycare, hopefully within at least the next 2 years.
Wow. Okay. Thank you.
I like that goal already. I love it.
Yeah, I do too. And we need.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to get my certificate in licensing after this semester, because right now I'm working and going to school. It's just a lot on my plate right now for me to actually start all of it.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You want to give yourself time. So you do it right. So I see lots of people from Chabot, somebody from San Francisco City College, a couple of people from City College of San Francisco. Some people from LPC.
Hi, Alice.
Hey, Kathleen, how are you?
Good. Could I introduce you?
Sure.
Tell me when you're going to get started and I'll kick it off. We have a lot of folks here, so that's good.
Yeah, we have a good number.
Good. Well, I'll just start it off and then you can start when you're ready. Welcome to Teach for the Bay. You're at your last afternoon day of Teach for the Bay. It's been a great 3 days. So thank you to all the attendees. And thank you all for considering careers in teaching. So we welcome Chabot College. They're going to be talking to you about their pathways and their programs. And we thank them for being here. Just a quick reminder, please don't forget to fill out the evaluation. You've probably got it from multiple sources. So we'd like to include it in our debrief, and recordings of workshops will be posted at the Teach for the Bay website in about 2 weeks. So if you miss something or you want to look again at something to clarify, they should be there. So I'll put the web link again in the chat. And again, thank you all for being here, and take it away, Chabot.
Thanks, Kathleen.
Thank you.
You want to go ahead and go to the next slide, Emanuel?
Sure.
Great. So here's who we are. I'm Alice Hale. I'm a full-time instructor in early childhood development at Chabot College. But I'm also the lead of our teacher pathway project, which is where we're trying to really build these maps of how, depending on where and who you want to teach, how you can plan your coursework at Chabot to transfer to a 4-year and beyond, so that it's clear, so that you get the classes you need when you need them, and you fulfill all the requirements. We're trying to really map it out for everyone. I'm a former preschool teacher. I've also done a lot of work in professional development in early childhood. I was a rater for First 5 quality counts. I was a career navigator at Chabot before I became a full-time instructor. And I will hand it over to my co-presenter, can introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. My name's Emanuel Lopez. I'm a full-time counselor here at Chabot College. And I am also a counselor in the Teacher Pathway Project. And I work with Alice in that and many other groups, right, Alice?
Yes.
And I have 7 years of counseling experience here at Chabot. But I have worked at CSU East Bay as well as an EOPS counselor. I've also worked as at UC Berkeley, and I've also worked at a private university down in Los Angeles. So I have over about 16 years of higher educational experience within counseling, student affairs, helping students to reach their goals. So just really excited to be here and be able to support you on your journey.
Okay, all right, can go to the next slide. So we're here to talk about the different pathways to being a teacher, and there are lots of them, and the pathway you're going to take depends on where you want to teach, because in the United States we have 2 different systems, really, though there are things happening that I think are starting to pull those systems together that's really exciting, that I'll mention briefly. But we have a preschool early childhood system, and we have the public system, traditionally referred to as K through 12, meaning kindergarten through 12th, though there's now a new grade level, transitional kindergarten, that's kind of a hybrid of the two. But in preschool, to be a preschool teacher in California, you need to earn your early childhood units. There are certain units that are required by licensing, 12 units. They name 3 specific classes that you need to take. And then the 4th class is one that's up to your choice. Most students at Chabot take 50 50, 56, 62, and 63, otherwise known as Principles and Practices of Early Childhood, Child Growth and Development, Child, Family, and Community, and Curriculum. Once you take those 4 classes, you're halfway through your ECD classes for the transfer degree. And those are the classes that licensing, those encompass the 3 classes that licensing requires and that are prerequisites, classes you need to have for other classes in the program. You need to get more units, specifically around administration if you want to be a program director or administrator. And there are specific classes if you want to be an infant and toddler teacher that you have to take, because there's specific things you need to know about that. The other thing, the state certifies preschool teachers with permits, and those are only required for state programs, state preschool programs. Private preschools don't generally require that you have a permit. If you have the units, that's often enough. But it is pretty true across the board, public and private, the more units you have and the more education you have translates into higher pay. The public, now the TK through 12 system is the public school system. And to teach in a public elementary school through high school, you need to earn a bachelor's degree. And then you need to get a credential, you need to go through a post-bachelor's credential program. And to get into the credential program, there are qualifying exams and coursework that we're going to talk a little more about. You have to get field work hours, where you have to have actual experience working with children to get into a credential program, because they don't want to invest a lot of time in training you to be a teacher if you're just going to say, oh, you know what, I hate working with kids. They don't want to do that. They want to know that you're already committed, that you've worked with children, you've worked in a classroom, you enjoy it, so they can invest in that training. And then this other level, transitional kindergarten, is the level for older 4-year-olds to go into before they enter kindergarten. Transitional kindergarten, you need to have a credential, but you also need to have 24 units of early childhood education or early childhood development. So that's the one grade level that has to encompasses the requirements of both systems. I do want to tell you, there was a meeting the other day where they started to talk about an early childhood credential, which means which means a post-bachelor's credential program to qualify you to teach in early childhood programs. And that the conversations about that are just starting. We're very excited about it, though, because it's acknowledging that education really needs to be on this continuum. We need to pay attention to what's going on with the youngest children all the way through high school in our system. So, stay tuned. It's not going to happen right away. It's going to take some years, but I think it's a really interesting development. So I'll go on to the next slide. So, I'm going to talk a little about some programs we have in our ECD program, the certificates. Certificates are programs that short-term programs you get that are issued. You're issued a certificate from Chabot when you complete it. All of our ECD certificates don't require any general education classes. They're just ECD classes. And they generally align with the requirements for specific job categories. So, and you'll see when I show you the list of what they are, you'll see what that means. Certificates are really great if you're a career changer, if you've already gotten a degree in another field, and you're coming back to school because you really want to work with children. A certificate is a great choice for you because you can get all those ECD classes. You already have the general education of another major. But then you've got this certificate that says, no, I'm qualified to be a preschool teacher as well. The other thing you can keep in mind is if you're working on your degree, you can earn certificates while you earn your degree. We've designed our certificates so that you are working towards, while you're earning them, you're also working towards your degree. They include a lot of the classes that you need for the ECD degrees as well. So next slide. So the certificates that we've added a bunch of them in the last few years. We have an associate teacher certificate, which is 16 units. That encompasses the units licensing requires for you to be a preschool teacher. What we find is a lot of students earn this certificate and they start working while they're continuing to earn their other units and other classes towards their degree. A basic teacher certificate is more units of ECE and these two qualify you for child development permits. We have an administration certificate that includes all of the administration classes. The infant toddler specialist, it covers the infant toddler classes. We have an intervention specialist degree, which incorporates our special needs classes, or classes about working with children with special needs, as well as some other classes that prepares you to be like a paraprofessional with a special needs class. And then we've got the family childcare entrepreneurship class, which gives you the basic early childhood classes, as well as a couple business classes, so that you're set up to be an effective business owner. And then we've got and so those are our certificates that really put you on track in the early childhood area, that put you on track to work in early childhood and preschools as teachers, specialists, administrators. Then we've got what I call our TK-12 track. We've got a TK curriculum specialist degree that really is designed for people who are credential teachers who are coming back and want to get early childhood, those 24 early childhood units. It's also a good course for people who've been working in preschools for a while, who want to beef up their curriculum knowledge, because it's all about how to design curriculum for preschools. And then we've got an educational aid certificate, which you can earn on your way towards that elementary ed degree. So we got lots of choices. As I said, you can earn these certificates while you're working towards the degree. You don't need to think, oh, do I want to do that or the degree? You can really do both. And then I'm going to turn it over to Emanuel, and he's going to talk about oh, I forgot this one. Yes. So another thing you might hear about in terms of preschools that I mentioned earlier, these child development permits. The state issues these permits, the state of California. You need them to work in what's called state preschools, which are preschools that are funded by the state of California. We've designed our certificates so that as you earn certain certificates, you earn the ECD classes needed for the permit, but they're not issued by Chabot. These come from the state of California, the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, but you can get help in applying for these permits at Chabot from our career navigator, Tara Lee. And I can send, I'm going to make this slide deck available to all of you. I'm going to send it out to you, and I'll include Tara's contact information as well. She can help. She does permit workshops where she explains how to qualify for the permit and how to apply, and she can help you with that process. So now I'm going to turn it over to Emanuel, and he's going to talk about our transfer degrees.
Thank you so much, Alice. And thank you all again for being here. Really excited to just kind of talk some of these pieces out with you all. So we're going to talk a little about some transfer pathways and tips. And so first, I'm going to go over just what I'm going to talk about, a little bit about general education. So for many of you that attended high school here, you remember your A through G requirements. So this is kind of like what we're going to talk a little bit for the college side, the general education. I'm also going to touch a little bit about associate degrees for transfer, some of the credential pieces, and just give you some transfer tools and tips. And then we'll finish it off a little early so we could have some times for a Q&A. So if there's some questions that are popping in your head, please let us know as well. So what is general education? Just like I said, many times our students come in and they're like, okay, I really want to go ahead and be a teacher. I want to make sure that I'm getting the right classes, right? And the first thing I start talking to them is like, well, if you're thinking about teaching, like, how does this align with your teaching goals, general education? And the reason why I ask that question is because many times your general education courses are actually kind of in path and in line with some of your degrees. So if you're taking a history class, for example, that could also many times go for your associate degree, for your associate's degree, also in transfer for elementary education. If you're taking some ECD courses, that could also go for the associate's degree in transfer. So depending on which one we're choosing. So these are questions I tell my students to start thinking about early. Instead of picking this general education, like, oh, I just really want to take this, I was going to say, I'm slipping, but a general education, a little bit different. I would say first, let's look at your pathway that we're thinking about teaching, and let's see if any of those courses in your pathway, we can take them as GE, because they can double count, right? They can count as your general education and they can count as your major. So this is how we get you out faster. I tell my students all the time, this is why it's important. Also, the new rules and regulations that Alice had touched on, that we're strongly recommending students to get B's or A's, of course, in your English and your math. And the reason why is because for the credentialing program, you're going to have to take sometimes what's called the CSET, these examinations. But what they're exploring is the option that using your courses, and what right now preliminary is like, if you're getting B's in your English and your math, you might be able to waive some of those tests. So that I think is super helpful. We're really, Alice and I and our pathway is super excited about that, because, less standardized testing, right? That's something that was always a challenge for me. So I tell my students, it's something that I always say, like, if we can get away by taking some classes, why not, right? But again, those regulations are still kind of in process. And what we recommend is at least getting a B in your English or your math courses. I wanted to cover a little bit about general education so you can kind of get an example. Some of you here are from Chabot and some of you are from different other community colleges. So I do want to let you know, I'm going to pull up the general education for Chabot, but please note that you have a CSU general education breadth or an IGETC general education sheet from the community college. So from any other community college, they're going to be very similar. The only thing is sometimes the classes that they offer are a little different. Maybe our US history is called History 7, right? But maybe at another institution, it might be called History 1A. So those are just little different nuances, but just know that these sheets can be found at multiple schools. And you always just want to check in with us as a counselor. If you're like, hey, I took this history class at City College of San Francisco, where does it go? We can help identify where that class will go. But just a quick brief example. So this is my first time doing it on Zoom here with the sharing. So I'm going to see how this works real quick. So, all right, you can still see my screen, right? Okay, so this is kind of, I'm going to make it a little bigger here. So this is kind of our CSU general education breadth. I'm just going to kind of scroll down. It's always important, of course, to read the top information, but just wanted to give you a quick example. So many times for teaching, you're going to need your English classes as well as your science courses, right? So if we're looking here for the general education, you will see like the speech class here. So if you take COM 1 here, you just, I always tell my students, start putting that down, right? So you know where you're taking it. If you're taking English 1, but this is important because again, your associate's degree for transfer, your ASTs are going to require some of these courses. And if you're taking it in GE, again, you could also use that. You could also use that for your major. And so this is important because remember how I was talking about how you don't want to just take any random general education class. For example, many times some colleges are going to want like a chemistry 10, an intro to college chemistry. Well, if they need the chemistry and you take that chemistry 10 here, right? It not only does it cover it for the requirements to transfer, but it also covers it for the GE. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Can I get some thumbs up just to see if that makes sense? Or if you have questions, let me know. Awesome. I see a couple thumbs up. Thank you. Thank you. I just want to make sure I'm being able to kind of interpret that correctly for you all. Okay, so this is kind of some of the general education. Again, you'll see sometimes I want you to take a regular biology course. So again, if you have it here on your general education and you also have it for your major requirements, you can count it in multiple places. Now, this is the key, the thing about teaching. I mean, about going into teaching that I tell my students is something that I want you to think about. The earlier you come and see a counselor, the better. And the reason why for teaching is because a lot of your major requirements are within your general education. Okay, a lot of your major requirements are within your general education. So we could help guide you with a plan that makes the most sense, that you're hitting, again, both requirements. So I went over the CSU GE breadth. I also just want to cover the IGETC really quick. This IGETC is, typically at the CSU, we're going to find more of the liberal arts majors for teaching. But if you're thinking about teaching in the high school and you want to focus more like on psychology or English, then the general education pattern that you're going to look for is going to be the I Get C. That will cover the CSUs also. That's going to be like your San Francisco State, your CSU East Bay. But the I Get C is also geared towards the UC. So like your UC Santa Cruz, UC Berkeley, UC Davis. So just to note that this general education pattern has very similar courses. They're both very, very similar. The I Get C is actually going to have a little bit less courses on it. So depending on where you're planning to go, just connect with your counselor. Connect with your counselor so we can make sure that you're hitting, again, both requirements, either with the I Get C or with the CSU GE breath. So I just kind of wanted to show you kind of an example of that. Again, if you're in another community college, this is for Chabot, but if you're in another community college and you're like, oh my gosh, I took a 3A here, but I don't see that film class here. If it falls at a 3A at another institution, most likely when you come over here, it's going to fall as a 3A as well for us. So that's typically how it goes. So that's how I tell my students to just kind of keep track of those pieces. But again, come and talk to us one-on-one and we can definitely help you fill in those blanks. Where are the classes going? What do I need to take? What do I have left, right? That as a counselor will be able to assist you with. All right, so just kind of a few things about the general education. Next, the associate degree for transfer. So again, the associate degree for transfer, the ADT, you'll hear it. There's a couple. There's the Associates of Science for transfer or the Associates of Arts for transfer. When you see, and then sometimes many students will ask me, well, what's the difference between the Associates of Arts and the Associates of Arts for transfer? The big thing I tell my students is the transfer, you have to complete the general education. You could do the CSU GE again pattern, or you could do the I Get C pattern. Okay. So you could do this one or this one, and then they're going to have their major requirements. So your associate's degree is comprised of major requirements and one of those patterns, either the I Get C or CSU GE breath. Again, your ADT is comprised, right, of your major requirements and your general education pattern. So you put those two together. Typically, you're going to get about 60 units, especially for the elementary teacher education, you'll get about 60 units. And that's what you need to transfer. So many times students are like, do I get to take extra classes? Do I get electives? How do I get to 60 units? It really depends. Every situation's a little different. But typically when you take your major requirements for your associate's degree for transfer, your general education pattern, again, the CSU GE breath or the I Get C, that's going to usually get you to about almost 60 or close to 60. If not, you'll have elective units, and those elective courses are great. Like if you're taking some more ECD classes and you want to finish up that certificate, right? Boom, there's some elective courses that might be good options for you. So those are different ways to play it where you can get, I always feel like the most bang for your buck, right? So now the AST also, I'm going to go ahead and pull this up real quick, just at Chabot here, has a list of classes. So remember how I was saying it was your major classes, right? So these would be kind of considered your major courses, your early childhood development 50, 54, 56, so on and so forth. So those, if you want to do the Associates in Science for transfer, you can go ahead. And this is mainly more for students that, correct me if I'm wrong, Alice, but TK through 5th grade, right? So TK through 5th grade. So this might be kind of the situation that you're going for.
This is if you really want to focus on preschool or TK through 5th grade. And I have to say, I was just in a workshop where we were talking about some anti-bias curriculum, and somebody said, I wish I'd learned more of this in my elementary ed prep. So this is good prep for an elementary school teacher, I think.
Awesome. Thank you, Alice. So that's kind of your major requirements. And again, this presentation will be on there or emailed, or I think just on the website so you can access it later. So don't feel like you have to write. And I'll go ahead once we get to the Q&A, I could put some of these links too in the chat if that helps as well. But again, so think about this as your major requirements. and then you have your GE pattern, right? So those together are going to help create or help you meet that goal to get the ADT. Is that making sense so far for people? So, all right. Now, if you decide to also, there's another AAT, which is the elementary teacher education. So this is what I was talking about, like starting early. And I was saying like, this one has a lot of courses you're going to notice. Now, I always tell, when I show this to my students, sometimes they get nervous because it depends where you're at, right? I always tell my students, depends. If you're coming in to see me after being a year and a half at Chabot, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, these are a lot of courses. These are a lot of courses. And I tell them, look, we're going to work with you to see if this makes the most sense or if you just take the transfer requirements. Because you don't have to have an AAT to transfer. Okay, again, you don't have to have an AAT to transfer. You just have to meet the 60 units, and you have to usually meet the minimum admission requirements or the requirements, the major requirements, or what's called the major prerequisites for transfer. So depending on the school that you're going to, I have to be very general. And if you're like, gosh, he's just kind of saying like maybe. The reason I tell my students is because it always depends on the school that we're transferring to. Some schools will say you have to meet all of these requirements. Other schools will say you have to meet some of these. Some of them will say GPA. So these are little things and nuances. I don't want to get into the weeds right now, but that's why it's important to come and see us, because depending on the school that you're interested in, we can help guide you and see what makes the most sense, okay? But earlier I was talking about how this AAT, like, let's say you're coming in fresh, you know that you want to teach in elementary and you're coming in, you want to see us right away. This is a great thing to come and meet with us about, because we could start recommending some of these courses that are hitting both the general education and your major courses. Again, your general education and your major. And you hear me say that a lot, because I tell my students, I always emphasize, like, how do we get you out of here the fastest? Not that we don't want you here, Chabot, but how do we get you out to get you to your educational goal, right? And we do that by making sure that we set up a really good, successful plan for you all. Things that are hitting, that you're hitting requirements for your major, as well as for your GE, as well as that are transferable, right? So all of those pieces are a little complex. But I tell my students, once you start to go over it with the counselor, we're able to kind of break those pieces down one-on-one and do whatever makes the most sense. So again, you'll see courses here that are on those general education sheets, like COM 1, English 1. This is going to be 1. We just changed that to 1, and we changed this to 4A or 7A. But if you look here, I'm just going to go back to that CSU GE, and you'll see here the COM 1, right? You'll see the English 1. Again, that was formerly 1A, but you'll see those pieces in there, and you could use them in both spots, okay? You could use them in both spots. So that's just something that I really want to emphasize again and again and again. And we're gonna have some degree maps coming soon. That's what our group is talking about, really is trying to find some degree maps and making a nice little plan for students to look at, and you can kind of start following those degree maps. Now, I will talk about a little bit at the end. I'll talk a little bit specific more about transfer requirements in a few minutes. But again, if you're just starting out, come and definitely check in with a counselor. Let us know if you're thinking, what always helps us is if you're thinking elementary education or if you're going to be thinking more secondary, because that's going to kind of lead into your credentials, right? So multiple subject credential for elementary schools, TK, transitional kindergarten, to like 5th grade, right? Or single subject credential for middle school. And it depends, right, Alice, I think on the middle school, or high school through high school sometimes, 6th through 12th grade, middle school is really 6, but depending on where you're going, that might dictate what you're taking. And what I mean by that is, let's say you want to be a history teacher, right? And I'll tell you, that was me. I wanted to be a history teacher, and I was going for my bachelor's in history, and I definitely wanted to focus on that history piece, right? Because I wanted to teach high school. And so I started thinking about teaching high school. I'm going to focus on that bachelor's in history. So when I go for my credential, I'm going to be doing the single subject credential. But if I wanted to teach elementary school, a liberal arts bachelor's degree might be a stronger fit for me, because I'm going to get kind of a lot of courses within that liberal arts education that's going to help me prepare for that multiple subject. Now, if you're like far along and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm already a psychology teacher, or I'm a psychology major, or a history major, but I want to teach little ones, come and talk to us, because we're going to be able to give you ways. We're going to talk about prerequisites you need or other pieces that you could start doing to kind of go that route. So I don't want you to feel nervous and be like, oh my gosh, I went down this route. Like, that's it. I can't do it anymore. No, there's always opportunities. And then if you want to be a special education teacher, we also have, there's also not us at Chabot, but there's also a special education credential. So there's where you're teaching students with special needs. Lastly, I want to put a little shout out to Chabot, because our ECD program is great, because we have field work already built in the ECD courses, as well as, let's say you're just thinking like, you know what, I've been thinking about being a teacher. And I think, like Alice said earlier, which I always say is so important, is that you want to be in that classroom, right? You want to make sure that this is kind of what you want to do. So we have some classes that could assist you with that. So our ECD 11, Exploring Education, that's a great class that could provide you with an introductory opportunity, right, to be in the field. And there is nothing more important, I think, and it doesn't matter necessarily not just teaching, but I think as a life piece, as trying to get some experience in any field and just seeing, because sometimes you might get there and you discover like, this is not what I want to do. And I tell my students, that's okay. That's okay. You can come back, we can check in, we can say, what are the things that you like, right? And how do we adjust? Alice, did you want to talk about the ECD 11 at all, or mention any piece?
Yeah, that's a class that I teach, and it involves some lecture, and it also involves field work in a school. So you get a chance to really be in a public school classroom, and you get to observe, you get to do some stuff, and I have to say, echoing what Manuel was saying, that I have had so many students in my ECD classes in ECD 11 who say, I got a degree in business, but I worked, but I really want to work with kids. So I'm coming back to get these courses. And, and that's, like I said, that's what, like, ECD certificates are great, and talking about what the general ed you need to sort of make that up. If you want to go and get a credential, there are ways to do it. And seeing a counselor is really essential to do it that really efficient way. So.
Thank you, Alice. Yeah, exactly. There's, I feel like I didn't really know this until I graduated, but there's not one way to do something, right? There's always multiple ways to do it. I'm a counselor, but I had a bachelor's in history, but then I did my master's in counseling. So there's just so many different ways that you can do things that I always tell my students. Let's say you're a student. So again, getting started early is a key thing. So you could start doing those teacher prep classes to align. And I know I've said that like 15 times, but I tell my students all the time, that's why it's so important to come and see us, so we can get you all set up earlier, the better. Now, again, let's say you're kind of like, I've already been in the community college for a couple years, right? And you're like, I've been here, I've kind of taken some classes here and there, but I really just discovered I wanted to be a teacher. Well, one of the schools that we work closely with and is our feeder school is CSU East Bay, right? And I just kind of want to go ahead. And if you don't know this website, I tell my students to definitely take this one down. It's assist.org. This is a great website to help you learn the requirements. And I'm going to explain that in a second. So if you want to do the teacher preparation program as a liberal studies major at CSU East Bay, here are some of the courses: the English 12A, the History 3, again, the Chemistry 10, biology class and an art class, and as well as a health. Now, some of you might be thinking, okay, well, if I do the ADT, remember that elementary education, do I have to necessarily do all these courses? What I do is we usually align you to take in within your associate's degree for transfer. We will put these courses in there because we know that CSU East Bay is going to want them. But if you came in a couple years, like you've been at the community college and you just discovered you want to teach, I might say, hey, that associate's degree for transfer, it's one way, but we could also get into this liberal arts program for teacher preparation by taking these classes, right? So we don't have that big list. Go ahead, Alice. Are you gonna have?
Oh, no, I was just gonna say that it, it's never too late. Well, you can always figure out a way to use what you've already got and find what you need, and get what you need in order to transfer.
Exactly. There is, because remember, we have those elective units. We need 60 units to transfer, right? So don't feel like, oh my gosh, I took all these random classes. What am I going to do? Like, come and check in with us. We'll start getting you all set up to make sure that you're hitting some of these main classes. And sometimes depending on the school, like East Bay, let's say, for example, you just have time to take 4 out of these courses, just 4 courses out of this list. You could still transfer to East Bay if you're hitting all the other requirements. That's like what's called your golden 4, which is your English, your critical thinking, your math, and your speech course, or your oral communication. So there's different ways where we can still transfer. And I tell this to my students, it's so important, because sometimes you're just ready to go. You're like, you know what? I'm ready. I've been at the community college, but now I'm ready to transfer. I just want to be there. And sometimes that motivation is there, right? And I tell my students, like, let's work together to see what makes the most sense. And let's get you out there, right? So we can, if you're missing one class, we'll see what we can do to get you either maybe in the summer before, or if you just take it over there, that's okay too. Again, depending on the program and the school, we could usually work with that. Okay. The only time that becomes an issue, honestly, I just throw this out there, is for the STEM majors. A lot of time for the science technology majors, those are the ones that they're like, no, we really need these requirements. So yeah, just something. Oh, go ahead.
One thing I was going to say is that, if you're finding this format a little confusing, this is the kind of thing we're working on, mapping out and really getting clear materials and clear maps. We're actually going to work with the folks at East Bay to show exactly, so you can see the sequence of courses from Chabot all the way through at Cal State East Bay, if you want to work on being a teacher. So we're getting going to have some different formats of things, so it's clearer for everyone. You'll be able to access this stuff in maybe a format that's a little easier to understand.
Thank you so much, Alice, because I do this all the time. So I'm just like, yeah, it's right here. It's all good. And then just to kind of just to break this down, I should have done that at the beginning. So I appreciate you jumping in, Alice. But like, for example, this English 12A is going to be this English 204 class at CSU East Bay, if you take our 12A here. I do see a hand up. So I just want to kind of address that if there's a question right now immediately. Julie.
Yeah, how hard is it to get into Cal East Bay?
So for Cal State East Bay, it depends on the school that you're coming from, but if you're a Chabot student, yeah, 60 units, your golden 4 complete, again, those English 1, your English 4A or 7A, your speech course like COM 1, your math course, your statistics, or what's called the B4 math quantitative course. So, check in with us about that, and a 2.0 GPA. Okay. Yeah. So it's actually, they make it relatively easy since there are what's called our feeder schools. So yeah, so it's really great. So also sometimes, I tell my students, sometimes life happens, right? And things go up and down and we're just like, oh no, what about my GPA right now? Come and check in with us. So there's also sometimes that we can talk to you about what's called academic renewal. So we could alleviate some of those grades and stuff maybe from the past, or again, we could see what other classes, how do we make it up, and how do we get you out as fast as possible. Okay, great question. Thank you, Julie. Does that help?
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right, so those are kind of a couple things. Assist.org, again, a great website that I would highly recommend for you all to just kind of look at, start exploring. And then, of course, don't feel like you're on your own. That's where you can come in, talk to a counselor. And for all our Chabot students, I tell my students, like, this is a time to come, because right now is kind of a little bit quieter. Like between if you start coming in November, registration begins mid-November. And sometimes counseling gets really full, because I always tell my students, we have about 10,000 students for like 20 of us, right? So come right now during October and check it out with us. At the end, I'll let you know when usually my drop-in hours are, where you can just come in without an appointment and we can just kind of check in and talk about that. So again, here's some tips and tools for you to use for transferring. And so now it's going to kind of lead us to the Q&A. So Julia's perfect timing. So thank you for starting it. Let's see. What are some questions right now that are popping up for y'all? And feel free to put them in the chat too. I have the chat open right now as well.
How to make an appointment to see you?
To make an appointment so as Chabot, for example, I will open that up just real quick. For a Chabot, for example, you would just go to our counseling website, and you could find the counseling website right at Chabot on online counseling here. And once this is going to take you to our website. And once you're here, you could just schedule an appointment online. Schedule an appointment online, and then you could look for, if you want to see me specifically, you could look for Lopez, Lopez, and we'll have our contact information there. But honestly, the best thing too, usually for me, is Monday, Wednesdays, because I do have limited appointments because I'm also a STEM counselor. So I always tell my students, online drop-in is the best way to get a hold of me if you're a Chabot student, you want to come and see. Of course, you could see any counselor, but you could do the online drop-in, and I'm usually there on Mondays. I'll put on the chat, Mondays and Wednesdays, from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And those are quick 15, 20, 30 minutes, usually between 15 to 30 minutes, depending on how many students we have, where I can talk to you, help get you started. And then if we need to make a follow-up appointment, I can actually schedule you an appointment with me right there as well. So depending on making sure that our availability does coincide. I do see it. I'll go ahead, Alice. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, everything's online right now in terms of counseling. Is that going to change next semester?
Yeah, next semester we'll have some in-person counseling as well. So we'll definitely have some in-person counseling as well. And so, yes, so for next semester, you'll have probably a mix of online and in person. So, and then Luisa, I see a hand up.
Yes. So I have experience subbing high school to teach Spanish. And so my goal is to get a single subject credential. I've already met with the counselor. But now that I'm studying early childhood and getting some units there, I really am like wanting to work with younger kids. I've also had experience volunteering with younger kids, and I think that their imagination and creativity, like that's one of my goals. However, public schools really only geared to bilingual schools starting in middle school. Like middle school and high school is where you can teach Spanish, unless you work for charter schools or for private schools. So what degree should I get if I want to like teach Spanish, but
in elementary?
Yeah.
Though? Yeah. And so, Alice, I'm going to kind of work with you on this one, because I'm thinking right now, because there's some districts, right, that will have I know, like I'm in Fremont Unified, and we have the immersion program, right?
Yeah, and there are a couple immersion programs in Oakland. I think they might be charters. I would say, get as much early childhood as you can, take the child development class. I'd say take the child family community class, get as much basis in the child development and issues around early education and as you can. And
the multiple subject, though, right, would be needed for the credential, right?
I think you'd want to head for a multiple subject, because then you'd be qualified to teach TK. And I think having a bilingual teacher in TK I think people would find really valuable in this area.
And so sometimes I tell my students also, sometimes I'll say like, let's work backwards, right? So we'll start to look at jobs that might sound interesting to you, open jobs, and we'll start looking at what are the degrees specific for them. So again, if you're going to be teaching elementary, it's probably going to be that multiple subject. But if you also want to teach that bilingual and then you have that multiple subject credential, but you maybe have that Spanish degree, right? Then you're going to have a nice little toolkit right there to go ahead and be very appealing to those schools.
Yeah. And if you wanted to go, the thing about the permit system in early childhood is if you wanted to, go that area, the permit system will allow you to have a BA in a lot of different, in any subject basically, as long as you have a certain number of early childhood units. So you don't necessarily need an early childhood BA as long as you have enough of those units. So you could, with a Spanish degree and enough early childhood units, be a program director in Head Start.
So a lot of options. Does that help
Yeah.
at least, Lisa, to get you started?
That really does help because, like I said, it was just really like I really love teaching Spanish. I think that's my goal. It's confusing into what I can do because I know that there's a lot of public schools do not teach Spanish right now, like in elementary level. So, thank you.
Yeah. I would highly encourage you to look at that Fremont Unified website because I know this. We do have the Spanish immersion. So check that out to see. And again, I know it's down the line, but it's always good to start looking now, just a little early, So, and that it was it wasn't a charter school here at Fremont. So, all right. So great question. Thank you. Any other questions? Or if you would like, you could also put them in the chat as well. So sometimes I know that we have.
So I've got a question, Manuel. If somebody wants to take like the ECD intervention degree, which is not a transfer degree, but if they wanted to take that degree and get the transfer units they needed, they could transfer with that degree to CSU, right?
Yeah. So that's the thing, because remember, you're going to need 60 units, right, to transfer. So sometimes what happens is those elective units come in, and that's how we will fulfill those elective units with the ECD courses, with the early childhood development courses, where you get your certificate and you're getting some transfer units. So just a quick tip. So I don't see many questions right now. I'll just kind of show you what I'm talking about here. So I'm going to go here to our web. I use the search menu for everything. But here is, I'll put this link here in case. But here are some of the CSU transfer courses I was talking about. So this is kind of a nice little list here. So maybe you look for a class and you don't see it on the general education pattern, and you're like, oh my gosh, I took this class. Does it transfer? It's not on the general education pattern. Well, just because it's not on the general education pattern doesn't mean it doesn't transfer. So for the CSUs, we'll have a list of these early childhood development classes that will be part of your 60 transferable units. So you could see here, like all of these classes, right, Alice, or a lot of your ECD classes right there will still count as transfer. And then you might be applying them to a certificate, like you were mentioning. Right. So that way you're getting yourself a certificate, you're transferring. So those are always things I tell my students. That's how we utilize every single class, is by seeing if we can do a certificate or if we can finish up an associate's degree or something along those lines.
And I see a question from Faria saying, I have done 12 units of ECD and have more than 1 year experience in Montessori school. Now I want to be an elementary school teacher. So you can, like Emanuel was just saying, you can apply those ECD units towards transfer. You can use some of that experience in a Montessori school as some field work time. Now you'll still need some field work time when in a preschool, in a elementary school classroom. But that, at least that experience shows that you have experience with children and you've worked in a school, and you can just get the rest of the things you need to transfer into that teacher pathway. So if you go, so you'll want to see a counselor so you can get that plan.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm sorry, y'all, I know that we keep saying like come and see us. It's just because every situation is different. So we don't want to be broad and be like, yeah, you do this, you're gonna be all right, right? And then you're like, oh no. so I know some of these pieces are really great questions. Alice, I was gonna ask you for the slides, how will students be given the slides?
I can send them out to everyone because I've got everyone's email addresses for
Perfect.
the registration.
Thank you so much. So
And
we will
then,
get you
and then
those.
we're also gonna we're gonna record this. It's gonna be posted with the conference, but I'm also gonna post it, I think, on the ECD webpage at Chabot, so that this session is available too, so people can hear this.
And then I see Gavin. I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly, Gavin.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. I graduated from Las Positas. I'm at East Bay, but I went back to Las Positas to take some classes. I'm looking to probably going to a teacher credential program, and I know that the field work is required. So I bet you could answer this, or Alice. The EC11 course, I didn't know about it since it's not an LPC, but I'll probably take that once I'm done with my bachelor's. Do you choose where you're put, or is it kind of you're assigned?
You're assigned, though we do take into account the grade level you want to teach.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, LPC is going to be teaching that class.
Oh, cool.
If that's more convenient to you, and they'll probably be placing people. We place predominantly in Hayward, but if LPC is more convenient to you, I think that's going to be on their schedule in the spring.
Perfect.
Because they are starting that, so you can take a look for that.
Awesome.
It's not going to be it might not be 11. I think they might be calling it 10, but I'm not sure.
I just looked on their website. The lowest is 15, so I'm like, oh, we don't even have that. But it's good to see you have it. And
it'll be coming.
Okay, thank you.
I thank you, Gavin. Appreciate the question. And I'm looking around. I do want to throw something out there for the future teachers, or for those of you that may have your bachelor's and going. That I tell my wife's actually a special education teacher, and one of the things that she did is she did her master's as well as her teaching credential, because sometimes for pay you're going to get paid, well, not sometimes, but a lot of times for pay, right, you're going to get paid on how many units you have as a teacher. And so the more units that you have, like after your bachelor's, typically you could take these extra classes and you can get more on the salary scale. I just kind of like to throw that out there for our students out there, for especially me as a first gen. So like every dollar mattered, like when I was going to school, and especially like I had to pay my loans after. So, and when my wife went to school, it was actually only like one more semester where she got her master's and her credential. And so it wasn't like another whole year and a half or anything like that, but she got her credential in a master's program. So that might be something to look into for credential with the master's tied in, and how many units they're doing. Because if you start to look at salary scales for teaching, you'll see depending on the amount of units, you might get paid a little more, which adds up, right? Every dollar counts, especially living in the Bay Area, y'all, right?
Yeah. And along those lines, I want to say that there's a lot of talk about how teachers don't get paid enough, and I will always advocate for teachers to get paid more across the board, everywhere. But teaching as a career does have a lot of advantages. It's a more family-friendly career. You're not gonna, you might bring some tests home to grade or something, but the day is going to be relatively short. You get a chance to do a lot of different things. It's a very active career. And you get to be outside for part of the day. You get to be interacting with people a lot. No 2 days are ever the same. It's always different. And you get the summers. You get your summers. And so during the summer, you can, be an entrepreneur. You can travel. And the other thing is, teaching jobs, you usually belong to a union. You get tenure, which protects your job. And, you know, if you have kids in school, you know that like administrators and principals come and go. And it's really, you know, it's job security to know that once you have tenure, there's the new principal can't come in and just fire everybody and stuff like that. Those are union jobs. They usually come with good benefits packages. And so it's in a very rewarding career. You know, I remember when I was teaching preschool and I would get lovely notes from parents and I would get flowers from children. And I thought, well, you know, I didn't get this when I worked on a website sitting at a computer all day. Nobody was bringing me flowers or writing me nice notes, and nobody was hugging me in the morning and in the evening, you know, in the afternoon. So, I know one of the reasons I think I have a lot of students who go and get degrees in something else and then come back is that they were convinced not to go into teaching because they wanted to make money. So they got a business degree or they got into computer science, and then they realized it was just not for them. And so, you know, your personal satisfaction with what you're doing is really important too. So I just want to put in a good word for that. And with that, I think
I love what you said. I just love what you said, Alice. I echo all that. I love it. I love it. I think it's so important. I love teaching, and I don't know, there's always that piece when, you know, when the student figures out like what you're trying to like convey. And I don't know, there's this feeling I feel like that money just can't do. And it's just, I don't know.
Right,
So
exactly. There's the satisfaction and the rewards of it are really hard to quantify. And you really can help change the world. You really can. So I want to thank everybody for being here. As I said, we'll be following up with the slide deck and the certificate of attendance. Here's our contact information briefly, but we'll also get that to you when we send this out. So I really want to thank everyone for coming, and keep in touch with me and with Manuel. And, you know, as we get more information about some of these waiver requirements and things, we'll be getting them out to our students. So enjoy the rest of your afternoon and have a great weekend, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you, y'all.
Okay. Thanks, Manuel. I'm going to sign off.
Okay. Have a good day, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.